full of economic miracles in East Africa and Africa at large. But how? Many African countries are known for having minerals from which they fetch revenue. But guess what? Kenya is not even among them. Kenya's economy is increasingly surpassing expectations. In matters concerning development, you can't fail to place Kenya among the top-ranked countries in Africa. Kenya is known for putting all its effort on infrastructure development through a number of sectors, an effort which Kenya started working on in the early 2000s, when Kenya was struggling politically and economically. Today, December 12, 1963, Kenya is no longer a British colony. Hey, that is me giving you a picture of how it was. Hope you liked it. And before we proceed, please subscribe to this channel. As I've said, December 12, 1963, Kenya had become independent from the British colony. Imagine uniting a number of cultures under one country. As other African countries, it was the same for Kenya, putting on the heavy shoes the British had left. The late Kenyatta, the Kenyan president then, and his colleagues had to work on a number of things to make sure that Kenya had to go ahead, but a lot was still lacking. Kenya received many setbacks in the 1980s and 90s, such as terrorism attacks in 1998 and 2001, the bombings on the US Embassy in Kenya. These added to the many challenges Kenya was receiving, like import bans on fish, trade wars, where Kenya had problems entering into the European market. Guess what? All those challenges were soon going to become history. In 2002, now the late Mwai Emilio Kibaki, who passed away in April 2022, was the newly elected president by then. His government and Kenya as a whole embarked on new strategies of reviving Kenya's economy. Most Kenyans by then were into poverty and unemployed. Over 2 million Kenyans had no jobs, and that was around 14.6% of the total labor force in 2002. And the youths were accounting for 45% of that total. Kenya had started working on structure and macroeconomic reforms in all sectors of the economy from the early 1990s, a move which the new government in 2002 was seriously working on. Since then, Kenya has received significant changes concerning economic development, now ranking 7th in terms of GDP with over 114 billion US dollars. Kenya is showing that even with non-known minerals such as oil, gold, diamond, and so on, it is able to squeeze the little resources it has to come up with an improved and developed economy, one of the richest in Africa, much more similar to Japan. Woo! In Kenya, both the public sector and private sector are like working to prove each other for the best service provision to the country. As the public sector works so hard to create suitable conditions for economic activities in Kenya, 80% is private sector, which dominates farming, manufacturing, and service sectors. Service sector involves a number of sub-sectors, such as tourism. Indeed, you can't talk about tourism in Africa and you fail to talk about Kenya's tourism industry. Kenya has well-preserved national parks, such as Nairobi National Park, which gives you a view of wildlife just from the city and other national parks such as Amboseli, Tsavo, Masai Mara, providing Kenya with over 167 billion Kenyan shillings. That is around $1 billion US. Other subsectors under the service sector are the financial sector, including commercial banks and non-bank financial institutions. Kenya is a good investment ground for banks, and a number of banks are seen operating in Kenya, such as UBA Kenya, the Cooperative Bank, and so on. All fall under the financial services. Other financial services in Kenya include real estate, where a number of real estate brokers are putting Kenya ahead, where Kenya, when it comes to real estate, is becoming more and more developed. From business buildings to residentials, Kenya can't be left out, with a number of buildings which are making up cities in Kenya. We can't wonder seeing Kenya having more than one city which are highly developed, such as Nairobi, the capital city, the city of Mombasa, Kisumu, and so on, which are eye-catching. Kenya's service sector also has a subsector of retail, which is dominated by small-scale street vendors, forming part of the informal sector known as jua kali, such as carpentry, motor vehicle repair, tailoring, hawking, and selling various items, plus a significant number of restaurants. We can't discuss Kenya without talking about the ports in Kenya. Kenya is a country known for having one of the busiest ports in Africa, and this is none other than Port Mombasa, located along the Indian Ocean. Port Mombasa. In 2023, the port is expected to handle 47 million tons of cargo in the next 10 years to come. The financial bill of 2022-2023 focuses on charging less for containers per 20-foot container at $10, that is 1,237 Kenyan shillings. So, with a capacity of 2.65 million of 20-feet containers, the Mombasa port and other ports such as Kisumu Port, Port of Malindi, Port of Mtwapa, Port Lamu, and other ports play a significant role towards the economy of Kenya and even other East African countries which are landlocked, such as Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. All these show that the service sector, which is dominated by the private sector, provides around 54% towards the country's GDP. Kenya's economy also includes agriculture, which contributes around 22% towards the country's GDP. Even though a number of sources reveal that Kenya's land is almost 80% semi-arid and arid, this isn't stopping Kenya at all when it comes to farming. Do you know even that Kenya is the third largest tea producer in the whole world, behind China and India? The 400,000 tons of tea it produces, Kenya is proving that it is among the best and the world's largest exporter of black tea, with over 500,000 small-scale Kenyan farmers growing tea throughout the country. The tea in Kenya is grown in regions such as Kericho, Nyambene Hills, and Nandi, yielding over $1.2 billion from export revenue. Tea, coffee, cut flowers, and vegetables are common in Kenyan farming sector. The Kenyan government is doing a great job in improving farming in Kenya. Talk about the Thiba irrigation dam, which was inaugurated in October 15, 2022. The dam is available to serve 5,000 households for irrigation of maize, rice, and vegetables. The rice production is expected to increase by 86,000 tons per year The Kenyan government promised to build at least 100 dams for drinking water supply and irrigation over the next few years. These will add to the other irrigation systems in other areas in Kenya, such as the Nile Basin parts of Kenya, including public and private irrigation schemes, such as West Kano, Ahero, and Bunyara irrigation schemes, plus a number of animals reared in Kenya is a great contribution. Kenya is also continuing to show its strength when it comes to manufacturing sector, contributing around 17% towards the country's GDP or gross domestic product. Kenya's manufacturing sector contributes to national output and exports without forgetting job creation. Playing an important role towards Kenya's economy, the manufacturing sector consists of the agro-processing industries, the garments, assembly of automotive components and electronics, plastics, paper, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, metals and engineering products for domestic and export markets. The farming sector really supports the manufacturing sector in Kenya. Take an example of agro-processing, where tea grown in Kenya is processed and supplied both locally and internationally. As East Africa's regional manufacturing hub, Kenya's manufacturing sector is developed in special economic zones and industrial parks, from which a number of products are manufactured. Direct and joint investment opportunities, where Kenya has an open gate for investors waiting to place their investments in terms of industries in Kenya. There are over 1,000 companies in the manufacturing sector of Kenya, as tea is one of the major crops grown in Kenya. No wonder that Kenya Tea Development Agents Holdings Company Limited has over 600,000 small tea farmers, majoring in growing and processing of tea for sale, both locally and internationally. With over 2.5 billion people consuming its products on international market, Unilever Manufacturing Company is also a success in Kenya, where it manufactures products such as Blue Band, a butter for bread, detergents, Vaselines, and so on. These companies add to other companies such as Bedico, manufacturing products such as cooking oil, soap, and other products used at home. We can't fail to talk about the car assembling and manufacturing subsectors in Kenya, as a company known as Associated Vehicle Assembly was taken over by Simba Corporation after being true partners for a while. AVA had been the largest vehicle assembling company in Kenya, working for brands such as Mitsubishi Motors, Scania, Tata, Hino, Toyota, now under Simba Corporation, as it took over AVA in 2017. Kenya's number of local assembly vehicles is a whopping 75% based on demand surge coming from Simba Corporation itself and other car assembling companies in Kenya such as Kenya Vehicle Manufacturers, known as KVM, which assembles for Hyundai Motor Corporation and Peugeot. General Motors East Africa also does the work of assembling very well in Kenya, plus Honda Motorcycle Kenya Limited. To mention but a few, Kenya is not only in assembling of cars, but it's also in an effort of car manufacturing from scratch. Already existing company Mobius has been working hard to come up with locally made cars such as Mobius series, which have been struggling to hit the Kenyan market, as the Kenyan government is working on the regulations concerning car manufacturing and assembly. In January 2022, a Swedish Kenyan technology company known as Opibus announced the beginning of trials for operation of the first ever electric bus fully designed and developed in Africa. That meant that Kenya is working hard to add to its neighbor Uganda, who is already manufacturing electric vehicles. We can't also fail to talk about Kenya's steel sector, which contributes around 13% of the manufacturing sector of Kenya, with over 30 registered iron and steel companies in Kenya, including Doki Steel Mills, Tononoka Steels Limited, Apex, and so on. This sector heavily contributes towards the growth of other sectors such as housing and construction. Now, our question is, how are all these relating with the public sector of Kenya, as it was started by the government, creating an environment suitable politically, socially, and even economically? Even though Kenya might not be the most peaceful country on the African continent because of some riots, strikes, which the citizens may put in place, but Kenya is not among the most dangerous, unstable, and violent countries on the African continent. Kenya's political stability and strategic location has greatly contributed to the growth and development of the country. Before looking at the policies favoring all the investors and even small-scale businesses, Kenya's political structure consists of executive power headed by the president, the legislative power which involves the parliament, and the judiciary, with the judiciary independent of the executive and legislative councils. Kenya has favorable investment policies, stable macroeconomic environment, which facilitates the investments and decisions made in the private sector. Kenya has a large number of multinational companies, which always will to put their headquarters in the country, which assure that after producing and manufacturing their goods, a wide market is available. This is because Kenya involves itself in a number of trade areas and acts. Talk of the African Growth and Opportunities Act, which comes with quota-free and duty-free access to the USA market, enabling trade for over 6,000 items produced in Kenya. The New Africa, Caribbean and Pacific European Union Economic Partnership Agreement, enabling free access to the European Union, among others. Talk of Kenya being a member in Common Market for East and Southern Africa. All these act as incentives to investment companies in Kenya. Kenya's public sector is also able to offer public transit infrastructure care, where a huge amount of infrastructure is put in place by the government for social care and smooth running of businesses in Kenya. Kenya is and has been able to work on a number of roads throughout the country. These include the Nairobi Expressway, which is the largest private public partnership project in the region, which costed over $600 million, which added to the number of roads which had already been constructed in Kenya, as former President Uhuru Kenyatta added on a number of kilometers to the roads in Kenya, more than 11,500 kilometers of tarmac roads, increasing Kenya's roads network by more than 85%. Another Kenya's President William Ruto unveiled building of road linking Kenya and Tanzania, which is part of the $61.4 million Malindi to Lunga or Lunga/Horohoro to Tanga to Bagamoyo East African Coastal Road Corridor, which will add to a number of road networks constructed in the country. These roads are easing the movement of vehicles such as matatu, the most widely used minibuses, plus buses and other vehicles. Kenya is also improving its transport through the railway systems it is putting in place, such as the SGR or Standard Gauge Railway Network from Mombasa to Nairobi and Naivasha. After its construction, this minimized the time taken to travel from Nairobi to Mombasa, costing over $3.5 billion. It is hard to talk about the best health systems of Africa and fail to talk about Kenya's health care, both private and public hospitals in Kenya. Kenya is among the top 5 best health systems in Africa. Ministry of Health takes over 42.9% of the total health facilities in the country, from small community services to national referral hospitals and large private hospitals. Kenya has a number of highly standardized private hospitals such as DM Private Hospital, Aga Khan, Kaswar Hospital, and a number of best public hospitals such as Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, National Spinal Injury Referral, Kenyatta National Hospital, and so on. Kenya, when it comes to education, is among the top 10 best countries in Africa when it comes to education, ranked 7th in Africa with 55.4 points and is rated 95th with a 78.7% literacy rate. The government invests almost 17.58% of the budget in education sector, consisting of 2 years in pre-primary, 3 years in lower primary, 3 years upper primary, 3 years lower secondary, 3 years senior school, and 3 years in college education, adding to a number of universities such as University of Nairobi, Kenyatta University, Strathmore University, United States International University, Africa, and so on. Kenya is East Africa's regional ICT hub. The country is a leader in broadband connectivity in East Africa, general ICT infrastructure, value-added services, mobile money and mobile banking, and financial tech services. The country's ICT sector is said to account for up to 7% of the country's GDP. The improvement in IT or ICT sector in Kenya has shown up in many sectors by improving the services in those businesses and large-scale firms. Kenya has intentions to align with global technological advancements and enhance the rise of Kenya's digital economy. Kenya in Africa has been able to quickly adapt to new generations in technology such as 3G, 4G, and is now testing the 5G through a number of telecom companies such as Safaricom and Airtel. Kenya's good investment ground is attracting a number of telecom companies such as Elon Musk's Starlink and others to come and also enjoy the benefits of Kenya's economic environment. Kenya is slowly but surely also improving its matters concerning space and satellites. Kenya is investing in space through Kenya Space Agency, which launched the first satellite in October 2018 and continuing to show interest in launching more satellites which are helpful in agriculture, disaster management, security, communication, and so on. This adds to Kenya Airways, which is among the top 5 best airways in Africa. Kenya is always willing to provide the best services when it comes to airplanes. Kenya's dream of a smart city known as Konza Technopolis is still also available. The project has seemed too slow in terms of constructing a number of proposed structures, but the government is working hard to convince investors into putting their cash and investments into this city. Now a question comes in, how about the electricity in Kenya? Kenya generates electricity from a number of sources such as geothermal plants it has, which is the leading contributor of power to the national grid, accounting for 44.12%, followed by hydro at 26.98%, plus wind and others. The 300 megawatt Lake Turkana wind power plant is the single largest wind power plant in Africa. Kenya has a total of over 3,000 megawatts of installed capacity of power. With this miraculous transformation of Kenya's economy, how do you think about it? Isn't it the Japan of Africa?